We will be. All right, I think we're good.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, everyone. This is the South Kingstown Planning Board. This is a special session on our meeting. The date is February 18th. Time is 7 o'clock, and it's in the year 2021. First item is roll call. Pam, will you take the roll, please?
Yes, indeed. Peter DiStefano,
Here.
Maria Mack,
Here.
Joe Murphy,
Here.
Susan Axelrod,
Here.
Paul Jordan,
Here.
Steve Demasi,
Here.
Pam Rubinoff here. And our staff, we have Jay Parker,
Here.
Jamie Rabbit,
Present.
Brian Wagner,
Here.
Rich Bourbonnais,
Here.
and Amy Goins, Special Legal Counsel.
This is Amy. I'm here.
Okay, thank you, Pam. All right, we have one item on our agenda tonight, and that's for a continuation of a preliminary plan, major subdivision, comprehensive permit for the village at Curtis Corner. Mr. Kenyon, are you with us?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am with you. I apologize. I'm going between Narragansett zoning and your meeting. So I just got done with my first hearing and I got to run back for my second
Okay,
in a little while. I've got a couple applications in between.
Okay.
But for the record, I'm John Kenyon, attorney for the applicant 5A Builders LLC. We're here tonight on the continued preliminary plan public hearing from the last 2 months. I believe that the public hearing was kept open and that the board had requested a draft motion. Since that time, we did submit a request to allow 2 model homes to be constructed, which is one of the requirements under your regulations. And we've also had some conversations with Mr. Rabbit regarding the question as to at least one of the findings of fact on whether the LMI units were compatible with the market rate units. And my recollection is at the last meeting, the board had requested a condition that the average size of the duplex LMI units and the market rate units be the same or close to. We've suggested a condition that the average size be within 10% to provide some flexibility. Getting it exact might be difficult. And there were also discussions that the LMI units did not have to be the same size as the single family units. But the board did have reservations about allowing unlimited size for the single family units. And if you recall, Alex made the point is he doesn't want to make the single family units too small because then they'll be dwarfed by the 2 family buildings. So what we've come up with was we're proposing an average size of 1,600 square feet for the single family units with a maximum of 1,800 square feet. So if someone does want a bigger one, then they'll have to go smaller on one to make the average work. And we figured that would limit the size. It's always been his intention to make these, as he says, the workforce affordable, affordable without a restriction. And we think those sizes would fit in and he doesn't really need to go any bigger than that. So I believe that was one of the few open issues. Alex is here tonight along with Eric Prevey if there's any other questions that the board has.
okay. First of all, did staff have any comments before I open it up to planning board members?
No, Mr. Chairman, I looked, we sent the draft motion to Mr. Kenyon. That was also sent out to the planning board. John, I'm not sure if you got it, so I just resent it to you now because the way you were speaking, it may not seem that you were in receipt of it, so.
Nope, I didn't get it earlier, but I got it now.
Okay, so, Mr. Chairman, the reference Mr. Kenyon made about the LMI units and the size has been incorporated into the draft motion. I did receive some comments back from at least 2 board members, and we made some slight typographical changes. Thank you, Susan and Maria, to reaching out to us in our haste to get this motion solidified early this afternoon and out to the board members. We missed a couple of edits.
All right. My only concern would be that those LMI units aren't so small that they're basically an accessory apartment unit. So, which if they're only 800 square feet, we're almost at the accessory unit limit. And I don't know if the board would think that would be a good plan.
Well, this is Amy. Remember that, size alone isn't what makes a dwelling unit an accessory dwelling unit, right? An accessory dwelling unit has to meet a number of requirements. None of these units are proposed as accessory dwelling units. And, you might think about asking the applicant whether accessory dwelling units are proposed. I'm assuming the answer is no. I think the Fieldstone Farm situation was unique. I don't think we're going to see future comprehensive permits with accessory dwelling units because of all the issues that those can create. But I would not assume that because they're small, I would not treat them as de facto accessory dwelling units simply because of the size.
Okay.
I would like to say that I agree with Steve's thoughts on this, only because we have struggled with this particular project to ensure that it meets the spirit and intent of the Low Mod Act.
Any other comments from board members? What's the board's pleasure? You want to go through the draft motion that's been presented, or were there some concerns from the last meeting that need to be reviewed?
I have a couple of thoughts with regard to that. I believe the public hearing is still open.
Yes.
So I think we should see if anyone from the public has any comments. Second is that, as everyone is well aware, receiving a draft motion the day of a meeting is challenging at best. Many of us work and don't sit at the computer all day, and it's very difficult to get this kind of thing at the 11th hour. Also, I did not see it posted on the town website. So that means that anybody, if I were a member of the public and I had any kind of interest in this project, I would not be able to see that draft motion, which we are now discussing. I don't think that's fair. And some issues with the site overall. Unless Mr. Privy can tell us otherwise, it appears that the open space is the stormwater management area. The architecture drawing that we had from earlier meetings does not adequately show the duplex. It's actually hidden by the single unit. It's shown slightly behind it and to the side. So you can't really see where the entrances are. And see how that back, you see one garage, you see one entrance. It looks like a single family house, and I don't understand how it can be a duplex unless it's going to be one single entry and one garage for both residences. And then I have some other comments about landscaping that I can leave until later on.
John, did you want to respond to Maria's comments, or Alex?
Sure. I understand that the board just received this, and that's probably mostly my fault. I know Jamie's been working pretty hard on this and didn't have all the necessary information he needed for this. So we understand that the board's seeing this for the first time and is most likely not going to vote on this tonight. But I think it helps to go through and discuss what's being suggested here. As far as the comment about the open space, I don't know, maybe Eric can answer the question that Maria had about that.
Sure. For the record, Eric Prevey, registered professional engineer with Deprete Engineering, offices at 2 Stafford Court in Cranston, Rhode Island. Yes, that's correct. The open space is, well, there is a large wooded swamp wetland also associated with it, and a detention and a basin. So yes, yep. So there is a piece of the upland right here. There is right here. There's also a small portion of upland outside of the 50-foot perimeter. Again, that's a 50-foot perimeter though. So really, I mean, the wetland itself is back where this lettered string is back here, the A series wetland. So all of this tends to be, more swampier as you get in here. But even this 50-foot, it is protected jurisdictionally, but it doesn't have the wetland characteristics. So there is another portion that is located generally in this area, and then there's a large, I'm going to go to the inset up here. I know it's a little bit more difficult to see, but there's a large parcel all up in here that is all as open space. And I think we had mentioned before that be willing to donate it to the town. It might actually, because there are culverts that come across the street to Asa Pond here, and it might be helpful to have that be as extra control. There's also some adjacent, these pieces over here are also town-owned land as well. So it might be nice to have a larger contiguous parcel over there as well.
Thank you, Eric.
Welcome.
Maria, did you want to ask about the landscaping
Yes.
while Eric's?
The plan that, well, it's not in front of us, but the plan that I looked at today, and the reference to that plan in the draft motion had vague language associated with the potential substitution, which I thought we had settled at the last meeting. Instead of having arborvitae, I had suggested white spruce, which is deer resistant, which does well in swampy areas, which serves as an excellent windbreak. And if they were concerned that the distance between the plantings would have to be greater than the arborvitae, then you could have an understory planting, whether it's something slow growing like American holly that isn't going to get too big, or a native rhodie or something of that nature. But I thought we had the issue of the substitution settled, which should be reflected on any motion going forward.
I remember Mr. Carter referenced some arborvitae that he planted by the police stations to counter Manuel, Maria, but you're right. I don't think there was ever a final decision made on what the species were going to be. He agreed to look at it.
I thought he agreed that it was an adequate substitution, and so I was surprised that it was referred to in that manner in the draft motion.
Okay.
Oh, and what about the architecture? Is somebody going to answer that question?
What? I just unmuted it. Stephen, Alex Petrucci here. Stephen, the arborvitaes were good enough for the police station, and I'm having an issue why that a public servant police station, which has probably got an endless budget, use that type of landscaping, and why I'm changing in my subdivision, because Maria Mack doesn't like it. I happen to like them. And I think it does a nice job. And I've used them in a lot of subdivisions.
Okay.
And by the way, Maria, why I got you on the duplexes that you talked about, the whole idea of those properties, if you like to bring them back up again, the whole object was to make this look, try to make the single families look so identical or similar to the duplexes. I could also put 2 double doors and make a regular standard duplex. That's not what I'm designing. I told you in the last meeting that the secondary entrance to the second unit is in the side. There's a walkway down the side, the same way we did the condos at the village at the village at South County Commons, which sold in the 600,000, by the way. And the best in the unit with the door on the side gets more of the backyard use. So 6 of one, a half a dozen of the other. The whole object of the project is to try to make the duplexes and the single families similar from the street. And I think my architects has a lot of knowledge in this. I depend on them and their expertise to come up with these drawings so that this project will look nice and affordable at the same time being affordable. Thank you.
Alex,
So I think Mr. Petrucci didn't quite understand. It wasn't to say that the architecture wasn't appropriate. It's just, it wasn't clear where, if there was going to be one single entrance and one garage for the duplex, or it looks like it's hidden. And yes, they look very similar in this drawing, but is this, is the duplex going to have more of an L shape, or to me, I'm not clear on how the other door is going to fit in and how it looks, granted it's in the background, but it does look smaller, which it's not going to be smaller, presumably, than a single family house. And it would just be helpful for us to be able to see what the entire building looks like. And as far as the arborvitae, this board did not have any say in the construction, design, or landscaping with regard to the police station because the town exempts itself from development plan review. And it is widely understood that, and I grow plants for a living, so I know a little bit about this, that deer are very attractive to the arborvitae, even though some cultivars are listed as deer resistant. And I think that having something like the white spruce would create a more natural look instead of the look that we see in so many subdivisions of that straight row of arborvitae. I think it's better. John Carter thought that it was doable. It's an appropriate plant given the wet site. And I don't think that's asking a lot, since we have not had a lot of opportunity to ask for a lot of things. I mean, some of the initial requests that we've had, like the walking path, that it has not been anything that is doable. And, you know, this should be a minor issue that should be able to be resolved fairly easily.
Marie, can I ask you a question? Seeing that
Certainly.
you know much about these plantings, is the cost of that type of planting next to the plants that we have submitted, are they more expensive, or are they in the same field?
All of the costs will depend on what you spec for the size and where you get them from. Transportation costs, things that are local tend to be less expensive, and buying something that's a transplant or a potted specimen versus, 8-foot bald and burlapped are going to be more expensive regardless of species. So again, that's something that you have to just look into, but it would certainly fit in better to the overall area. And considering that there's going to be a lot of clear cutting that will go on the site, I think it's a reasonable substitute.
All right, well, I don't, I mean, I'm not really against changing the plantings. As you can understand that I'm just, the whole object again, to back you up a year and 12 months or whatever it's been. We're trying to keep this project as affordable as possible for the single family homes in top of the duplexes. So that we can get in blue collar workers to stay in this area. I mean, the whole idea of the project, that's why when you people talk about one of the board members was worried about building big houses. That's not gonna happen there, because my whole idea of the project, if you remember from the beginning, was to try to make these market rate affordables for the young couples and even the retired couples that could stay in the area that can't afford the outrageous pricing that's going on right now. Since we've started this project, prices, of course, have risen. Material prices have gone up. Right now, my road costs are being held pretty solid right now, especially if I can get this project under construction by the next month or so that my road builders can do it in the right weather, which saves money, should be passed on to the homeowners. That's the only reason I was being a little bit critical about the landscaping, was I just want to make sure that I'm not out spending $1 for a tree that costs $5 a tree. And my people have explained to me that on the phone as we've been talking, that it should be pretty comparable. So if it would make everybody happy and would make the project look better, I've got no problem with that.
Alex, can you
Thank you.
just-
That's appreciated.
Can you just clarify, and I think you did say it at the last meeting, but the duplexes only have one garage, correct? Alex, did you hear my question? The duplexes only have one garage?
I'm sorry, say again.
Can you just clarify? I think you stated at the last meeting, but the duplexes will only have one garage.
Yeah, that's correct. The front
Okay.
unit will have the garage, the back unit will have the decks and sliding doors. So 6 of one, half a dozen of the other.
Okay.
That way that they can both have, like any other home, your backyard is, nicer because you got sliding doors and you got your deck out the back. The front unit's going to have a garage, but it'll probably have a small little deck on the side. So, I mean, because we're going from front to back, we're not going from left to right. Because
Okay.
if we went from left to right, the unit would look huge, and then it would make the single family homes look small. So if you can understand how that, let's say the front of the house is, just to give you an example, let's say the front of the duplex is 30 feet across the front. The single family is 30 feet across the front. But if the duplex was across the front, you'd end up with 60 foot across the front. You follow what I'm talking about?
Yes.
Okay, so when I came up with this design, which actually Frank Kopowitz, which is the designer, he came up with some of these. He said most of the duplexes we could do in the shot club shape, and it would look look more villagey from the street, and that's what I'm trying to accomplish, the villagey look.
All right. Thank you. Any other questions from board members? Joe?
Do we have, I know the conditions of approval, we have a proposed average size and maximum size for the single families. Do we have a proposed average and maximum size for the duplex units?
Yes, we do.
Okay, which condition, where is that? I missed it.
So, Mr. Chairman, Jamie Rabbit,
Yes.
Planning
Go ahead,
Director.
Jamie.
if the board looks at condition number 5, I believe, sorry, condition number 4 on page 4 of 11.
That is for the single units, single family units of
No,
no.
the wording is the average size of the LMI duplex units shall be within 10% of the average size of the market rate duplex unit.
Right, but we don't have a size for the duplex units. We have a size, then further down, we have a size for the single family, average 16 and maximum of 18. And we have a relative within 10% proposal, but not necessarily a size of what that duplex unit would be.
Mr. Murphy, I think from my recollection, and Mr. Alex is available this evening, I think he mentioned 1,200 square feet for the duplex footprint. So the range would be 10% of that 1,200 feet.
Is that correct? And are we okay with putting that? Well, I
We
guess
can
when we
add
get to
that
condition approval.
sentence, yeah.
But when, excuse me, when I say 1,200, that's per unit, not per whole duplex. God, my God.
Correct, no,
Right,
per
right.
unit.
Per unit, yeah. So basically, Joe, basically what'll happen is, let's say originally I went 20%, but I even thought about that even doesn't make sense. 10% makes more sense because that way there you can have a 1,200 in the front and 1,000 in the back, or 1,050 in the back, or 1,300 in the front and 1,200 in the back. And I mean,
I got it.
and it won't get too big, because if you get too big, then you're gonna blow this duplex out of the affordable market again. That's the other problem. If the duplex was 1,500 per side, or 1,500 on one side and even 1,000 on the other side, would bring it up to 2,500. And do the math, today's pricing, if you do the math, you're gonna be up around, Jesus, on 2,500 square feet, you're gonna be at $600,000 to sell the houses, and that's what I'm not trying to do.
All right, so what I got out of that was that you're proposing an average of 1,200 square feet for the duplex unit, and the conditions of approval are proposing that the LMI units be within 10% of that, which would make an average of 1,080 for the LMI units, right? Correct? Is that?
Basically, yes, that sounds right.
All right, and Amy alluded to it earlier, but that these are being proposed as duplex units, so they're not being proposed as ADUs, accessory dwelling units. And truthfully, it wouldn't be in your favor anyways, because there's other restrictions on ADUs that may make them less marketable. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, if we, so if that condition read, the average size of the LMI duplex unit shall be within 10% of the average size of the market rate unit. And instead of potentially saying average size, just say the market rate duplex unit shall be a minimum square footage of 1,200 and a maximum square footage of 1,400. So if you have that range of the duplex unit of 12 and 14, the LMI next to that would be within 10% of that range.
Okay.
So it wouldn't necessarily be an average. If Mr. Bertucci builds a duplex that has a 1,200 square foot side, he could reduce the LMI duplex by 10% of that. And if he had a 1,400 square foot market rate duplex side, he could reduce it by 10% of that 1,400.
Okay, and Jamie, to Joe's point, you're gonna put that in that condition number 4?
I just wrote what I read to you.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Any other questions, Joe?
No.
Can I clarify one thing with Steve?
Yeah.
If the duplex lays out at, let's say, just use it for round numbers, let's say that the duplex lays out at 1,000 square feet for the market rate, the affordable one would be 900. That's the 10% difference. If the market rate one goes to 1,100, the other unit will be 10%. The maximum it could be is 10%. That's what I'm trying to accomplish. Is that understood?
All right, so Jamie just said that, or was just proposed that 1,200 would be the minimum size.
I
No.
could clarify with Mr. Petrucci. The market rate duplex, what would the range for that be? 1,000 to 1,200 or 1,200 to 14?
Steve, the problem again, if I set the minimum at 1,200 on this one side, that means that the minimum that duplex can be built is over 2,200 square feet, 2,300 square feet. And what I'm afraid again, if I get locked into that, I might put those affordable affordable duplexes out of the market for the people that can afford to buy them. And that's what I don't want to end up saying, God, I can't.
Let me,
I
Go ahead,
gotta
Amy.
be able to adjust. I gotta
Alex,
adjust.
Amy wants to weigh in. Let's see what she,
this is
Help us
Amy.
through this.
Here's the problem, Mr. Petrucci. The board needs something concrete at this stage of review in order to make that positive finding, as you know, required by state law, that the LMI units are compatible in scale to the market rate units. So we do need something concrete. That being said, if it turns out down the line a year from now when you're getting ready to market, if it turns out that you need to adjust those numbers, you can come back to the board. And if the board wants, you could delegate authority to the administrative officer, right, to the planning director to adjust those numbers up to a certain range. I do think, though, that we need some concrete numbers at this stage. I don't think we can grant a completely open-ended approval. I think that was it was appropriate to do so at master plan, but now that we're preliminary, it's expected that we really will have some hard numbers here that I'm not going to say are set in stone, but are set in stone until you come and ask for them to be modified if the market conditions warrant.
I
Amy, to
understand.
that point, and listening to Alex, I did adjust the language to be within 1,000 at the low end and 1,200 at the high end for the duplex unit.
Yeah, I think as long as the board has has numbers and the board can make that finding in its judgment, but it can't be totally open-ended.
That's fine with me. If we could set it at 1,000, 1,000 and 10% either way, that'd be sufficient for me. At least I'm staying under that 2,000 square feet. Try to keep, because then they'd be a lot more compatible with the single families. If the single families are, let's say 14, 15, so that 14, 15, if I had to do the math in front of you, the unit from the front would almost be identically in the width. One will be a little bit longer than the other, and I think it would work out very nicely. I think if we use those numbers, if the board would be happy with those numbers, I think we could work with those numbers. And like you said, and if it doesn't work in the future, if I start running into a real problem, I always could come back and explain the whole thing to the board. But I understand where you're coming from, that you need something concrete to give a final approval now. Thank you.
Joe, did you have any more questions for Alex? Okay, I think I saw Susan's hand up.
You did. Hi, everybody. I have a couple of quick questions. Going back to the garage, does the fact that the market rate unit has a garage and the other doesn't, is that still considered to be similar enough in size and scale if that amenity is with one unit and not the other?
He didn't specify that necessarily that whoever buys those duplexes, Alex said may prefer the backyard and the privacy of the backyard, and I believe the front unit has the garage. So it might be their option.
Okay. And does that fit with the language that we need to follow for the similar size and scale? If one has a garage and one doesn't?
I guess is the garage part of the living space as far as square foot calculation?
No,
No.
it's not considered living space.
Okay.
Thank you. I also would like to ask, so at the last meeting, we went around and around about whether or not there would be granite monuments as wetland markers. And some on the board appear to want fencing. Has that changed? Are we no longer talking about fencing and we're just moving on and doing granite markers?
Mr. Chairman, I may be able to address that.
Okay.
Again, there was a robust discussion on fencing, granite monuments, posts, what type of fencing. And Jay, if I can share my screen real quickly. Just bear with me.
Oops. There it
Can
is.
everybody see that?
Yes.
Okay. So in this discussion, Susan brings up a good point, but what was represented on the preliminary plan are rectangular buildings. And the applicant stated in his architectural discussion that he is looking at a shotgun style house with a width of 30 feet. If you're doing 1,200 square feet and adding and above for a duplex, you need 1,200 on the footprint, and you need another 400 potentially upstairs on each unit. So the red outlined areas are fairly representative of what a shotgun unit will look like on the parcel. So particularly for lots 13, 12, 10, it gets extremely tight. On lot 12 with that shotgun style house, if you walked out of the back of the house, you would have a split rail fence. So, and then vegetated a forested area right behind that. And I think Mr. Prevey has stated that it is a wooded wetland, so it is a forested area. The limits of clearing are the 50-foot buffer. So looking at a potential solution is a possible placement of basically a large granite block on the property line, the side property lines at the 50-foot demarcation point. Mr. Kenyon represented to me in conversations that they would be willing to put a restrictive conservation easement on that 50-foot area between the wetlands markers and that buffer to basically be a no-cut zone and leave it in its natural state. You have these are individually owned lots with potentially an HOA. The life cycle of a fence is very different than a granite marker. Those granite markers at the weight, they're in essence should be over 200 pounds each. Someone's really got to try to remove it, and they should be there in essence in perpetuity unless someone physically moves them. A fence is going to have to be replaced over the years, and to me is subject to not being there over time. So again, I was looking at potentially an option of doing something with more permanence, although it isn't a physical barrier, but it has more permanence. And I also recommend that those actually have placards on them that identify why they're there.
Jamie, how far apart would they be?
On lot 11, 80 feet apart. They're the width of the lot.
Okay.
So literally you would have one, two on lot 13, going left to right on the rear of lot 13's property boundary where the wetlands buffer line crosses. There would be a, in essence, stone. Between lots 13 and 12, a large stone at that buffer, and then in between 12 and 11, 11 and 10, 9, and and sequentially through that area. Again, they're not little granite, mere stones associated with the survey. I'm recommending a minimum of 2 by 2 by 3. So if anyone has a dog and ever had a dog crate, they're almost a little bit smaller than a typical medium-sized dog crate.
Okay. But it's not something they're gonna be able to roll around.
You're gonna have to be pretty strong to move these. It's discuss the placement of them with the applicant, and again, it may be, the product may have a different price point, but the installation isn't done by a fence company. It's literally dropped with a bobcat, and then you're done and you walk away from it.
So Jamie, back to your drawing, which by the way is too small to actually see the numbers of the lots, but I have my hard copy here. The shaded red area represents an L shape and the buildings will be L-shaped. Is that what you're?
Oh, hang on. I will, just bear with me a moment and I can. Just bear with me. The top of my screen for okay. Just bear with me. So I'm going to go to, whoops, sorry. Is that a little bit better for everybody?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
All right, as I said that, I slid down again. So looking at lot 11, which isn't a duplex lot, the gray represents the initial rectangle associated with the site development plan. It's in slight conflict with the style of home that the applicant has stated he wants to build. The red outlined represents a 30 by 40 foot block. 30 by 50, sorry, 30 by 50 or 1,500 square feet. Wouldn't be L-shaped. That's just the rectangular shape of a 30 by 50 or 1,500 square foot footprint.
But you're saying the duplex would be a deeper than a,
The duplex potentially is going to have to be slightly deeper.
okay.
And again, the applicant stated tonight that if they're 1,000 square feet, the front could be 30 by 30, 900 square feet on the first floor, bedroom upstairs. The back unit could be 30 by 30 or 900 square feet. So the total would be 30 by 60. So they'd be slightly longer, but they'd be relatively consistent with the red rectangles versus the gray. The gray does not represent a duplex unit that's being proposed or represented in the architecturals.
Okay. Paul?
Jamie, while you've got this slide up, it's Paul Jordan. So that 50-foot perimeter wetland, is that going to be subject to an easement? I'm not clear when I look at the discussion of open space and granite markers, but the
Yep. Mr. Jordan, Mr. Kenyon in discussions, and I did attach attachment B is a representative sample restrictive covenants easement for the purpose of maintaining existing areas associated with a wetlands boundary. And in essence, it would be proposed as a no-cut zone, so it'd be an additional regulatory layer. It was discussed that that actual conservation easement would be deeded to the municipality, who would have enforcement authority over that, as well as the HOA. In most instances, it's going to be a neighbor turning in a neighbor. Paul, you're muted.
Yeah, thanks, Jamie. I know we talked about the fence last time, but I think that, just as long as there's some sort of an enforceable easement on that, and you're right, it's always the neighbors that turn them in, but, that we can go back and require stuff to be replanted and whatnot. So that works for me. Thank you.
Joe?
This actually goes back to a question that Susan had asked earlier about the garages and whether they were considered livable space, and the answer was no. But the question goes to staff on enclosed porches or enclosed decks, covered decks. That's also not living space, right? At what point does it become living space?
Typically, Mr. Chairman, if I can answer that, it would be screened in and or conditioned, primarily conditioned. So that means heated or cooled.
Because I just want to make sure that in one case, we're not putting a garage on the market rate unit and not counting that, and then putting a covered porch on the back and the LMI unit and counting that to make up the, the equivalent.
No,
So-
it's conditioned, heated, cooled space, insulated, and, part of the HVAC system.
And that particular, that is not set in stone anyway, the question of garage versus deck. And I imagine that would have a lot to do with what time of year you might buy your property, whether you cared more about a garage or a deck, February versus July.
Good point.
Today, garage.
Yeah. Yeah. Any more questions from board members at this moment, or do we want to see if the attendees have any questions?
May I add something? This is Rich Bourbonnais.
Go ahead,
Town
Rich.
engineer. Yeah. It's not the town that regulates the perimeter wetland. It'll be DEM. So if any clearings happen, and Paul, you of course know this, but any clearing happens within the perimeter wetland, it could be potentially reported to DEM, and DEM would. It's not the town that regulates that.
Rich, I agree with you up to a point, but if the town or the town land trust has an easement on the property, then the town is another party to require, if no one else enforces it, the town has the authority to say, hey, you're messing with my easement. So I think that's the point.
Well, but even the land trust would they would most likely use DEM as the way to get things fixed if it has to be fixed. It's just that it's a little easier that way, frankly.
And
Rich, is that
remember,
by-
Paul, that South Kingstown Land Trust is private. It's not municipal.
So they wouldn't be the holder of this. No.
No.
Okay. Rich, is that by a flyover that they would determine a infringement on the flyover, the yearly photographs they take? Or?
No. It would be reported. If we were to observe something that shouldn't be happening, we would make that we would call DEM, and we do. So
That's not to say, though, Steve, that DEM has not used its flyovers to detect violations. They have.
Okay.
and what often happens is that if somebody comes in for a permit for something else, let's say somebody's going to put a shed in their yard and it was going to encroach, DEM would come back and say, no, you've got to first replicate everything that you destroyed, and then we'll take care of what you just asked for. Eventually, it all comes around, but it would be DEM that would regulate.
Yeah, and that might be a good point, that if homeowners are going to put up a shed in the back, that, you know, if it's something that, a small one that they can buy somewhere and it's trucked in and dropped, they don't need a building permit. I think if they're under a certain cost. So maybe the homeowners association should be notified so that we know the placement isn't within the buffer, even though there's granite markers
would-
there.
Can I
Yeah.
explain to you how I handle these properties that have a buffer on it to my customers? Let me explain to you what I tell them. When they buy a piece of property that the land goes into a buffer area, they are paying property taxes on that piece of property. They own that piece of property. And I explain to them in completely how the part of that property is not to be, number one, any tree cutting. Nothing should be, except for if you want to go out there and clean the ground, clean around the trees and rake up, that's fine. I explained this to them. I also, it's right in our condo, our association, that if anybody violates that, they can actually go in and charge the homeowner to restore it. So we try to protect it all different directions. I don't just sell houses, oh yeah, there's your land, it goes out back there, do what you want. We tell them in advance, because a lot of people, they just don't understand. And there's absolutely nothing wrong. If you walk in the back of that properties and those buffers, it's not like you're walking in mud and dirt and garbage. I mean, it's a little wooded area and it's a protected area to the wetlands. So if you're sitting on your deck, you're looking right out in the woods. I mean, you got deer walking around and I mean, 99% of the people don't touch the, don't cut trees, don't touch it. I mean, you're gonna have troublemakers. I don't care where you go, but we try to police it by telling them in advance. We actually walk them out there and show them, especially Mr. Rabbit had a great idea with these bounds. I mean, you got to be pretty dumb, and those bounds are big and heavy. You're not moving those things. This is the bound. This is the other bound. This is where the line is. That is protected. You can cut your grass. You can plant your grass to this line. From there on, you don't touch. And I tell them that from the beginning. And I tell my brokers that are selling the real estate to make sure that they tell them this.
All right, thank you.
I don't
Alex.
need-
Amy was shaking her head, so I guess she agrees with you. So,
Yeah, this is Amy. You know, we review the HOA documents and will ensure that that's included in the HOA documents.
Thank you.
okay,
I know that sometimes we have also agreed to have some reference to this in the deeds. I can't remember if Mr. Kenyon may have mentioned this at a prior meeting or not.
He did. Yeah. Mr. Chairman, to Mrs. Mack's point, that's why staff attached item B was as a direct result of Mr. Kenyon's testimony last month and follow-up conversations about his willingness to put the restrictive conservation easement on that area,
okay.
in addition to DEM's oversight and regulatory authority.
Okay. Joe, you had another question? Oh, you had your hand up, so that's. All right. Was there anybody in the audience that would like to question the applicant or staff? If so, please raise your hand. This is a public hearing, so this is your time to comment. Okay, Sean, Jay, can you bring Sean in, please? Go ahead, Sean. Please state your name.
Sean Divler.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so I had asked this question before and it doesn't look like it's been addressed. The letter of eligibility from Rhode Island Housing talks about the proposed sale of 8 market rate duplexes, which will each will contain 1 affordable rental unit. But the monitoring agent letter from Narragansett Housing is talking about qualifying potential homeownerships. So has that been resolved?
Well, I think, I don't know, these are going to be all rented, Alex, right? Not purchased?
That's correct. They're rented.
Right.
The way the thing is set up is that the property in the house is market rate. So that the reason for it was, I'll back you all up, that due respect to the town planner, the old town planner asked me if there was a way that we could get more rental units in town. I came up with this idea, and the problem that you're having with affordable single-family homes, it's a tough sell to people. Parents don't want children to buy them. There's a whole problem. This solves that problem. They can buy the house and they can rent it. They can rent their half. The half is an affordable rental, which is controlled by the state. That's how this whole project works. Each one of them duplexes, that's that unit in the back or in the front. Doesn't matter if it could be in the front, could be in the back. Depends on where the person that's buying the unit prefers to call what end to be the affordable. And they cannot rent it to anybody that's not in the affordable program. That's the way this is going down.
Okay, so to answer Sean's question, the LMIs are going to be rental units.
That's correct.
And that'll be overseen by a monitoring agent, Sean.
Okay.
Did you have any other questions?
So that's why the duplexes only have 1 water service to them also, because they're rental units?
I don't know if there's going to be 1 water service or 2. Typically, each unit
Well,
has a water service.
Normally it would be 2. This is, Eric can answer, but it's Suez Water, but normally it would be 2.
Because the performance bond estimate has listed 24 curb stops.
Right.
And they're metered from the house.
Yeah, for the record, Eric Privy. Yeah, they can do it either way, but that we'll coordinate with Suez Water. It would either be 2 stops out at the street, or you could have it sub-metered internally. So we'll do whatever Suez Water wants. We're not obviously going to go against what the water authority wants.
Okay, thank you, Eric.
Could I ask a question following something that Sean asked?
Well, can we let Sean finish, Susan? Thank you. I'll come back to you.
Thank you.
So as I was listening tonight, I did out the calculations. So if you did 8 duplexes at 1,000 square feet for your regular house and 900 for your affordable, and you did 16 houses at 1,400 square feet, comes out to 37,600 square foot of housing. If you divide that down to get your affordable rate, you're at 19.15% for affordable housing out of total square footage.
Yeah, Ms. Chairman, just for clarity, the LMI unit percentages are not based on square footage. They're based on unit total.
Okay.
All right, that's all I had.
Okay, thank you, Sean. Susan, you had a follow-up question?
I do, and it was something from a question Sean had. So logistically, who's responsible for listing this unit with Narragansett Affordable Housing? Is it up to the homeowner to determine which unit he's going to occupy, and then like who, since we don't know upon building which unit will be affordable, how does this get listed and whose responsibility is that?
You understand the question, Amy? If somebody,
I understand the question. Haven't the, has the exact location of the LMI units been determined, or is it just we know that half of the duplex units will be LMI, but we're not going to say left or right at this point?
that's my understanding.
The latter?
Yes.
Okay, right. And I don't think it matters one way or the other. We know that half of the duplex units are going to contain the LMI units. The LMI units will be deed restricted. So once they're identified, they will be marketed by the developer under the supervision of the monitoring agent. Both the town, meaning the planning department, and me will review the deed restrictions. The monitoring agent plays a much more active role, right, than the town. After the legal documents are recorded, it's between the developer and the monitoring agent, and that's what the yearly fee is for, to support the monitoring agent's work in this regard. They ensure that the unit is occupied by an eligible renter. And at transfer, meaning every time there's a new occupant in that LMI unit, it's the responsibility of the developer, of the property owner, overseen by the monitoring agent, to ensure that the new renter is eligible. Does that answer the question?
No, sorry. So it won't be available until the duplex unit is purchased by a market rate buyer, right? Like the unit won't be, it couldn't be occupied until the duplex is purchased.
I think, Susan, when Alex pulls a building permit, if he has a buyer for a duplex, and he talks to them and they decide whether they want the front unit or the back unit, and then the square footage that they want, I think at that point, it's going to be established with the building permit, which is going to be the LMI unit.
Okay, so it wouldn't happen after it was built. It would happen when it was contracted to be built. It would be determined then.
Susan, it happens when the deed is issued for the property, when it's purchased. The deed restriction for the home gets recorded at the same time that the title is transferred.
Yes, and this is Amy. The key points at which the town ensures simultaneous construction and occupancy of the market rate units vis-a-vis the LMI units are building permit issuance, that's construction, and issuance of the certificate of occupancy, that's occupancy. So the town reviews at each of those, at the time of issuance of the building permit and at the time of issuance of a CO, the town ensures that that schedule that's laid out is satisfied.
Can I interrupt a little bit? I just want to add this to this issue because it's obviously it's new for everybody. As we spoke in the beginning, I was asking for a couple of models to be built, okay? One of those models is going to be the duplex, because when I spoke with you, Amy, it makes sense to build a duplex to stay ahead of that timing we talked about. Remember, we said something about you had to build so many affordables as you built the other one. So the best way to do it is start off with one of the duplexes, okay? But at the time of pulling that building permit, we know that one of those units are deed restricted. What I'm asking for is that isn't decided until I sell the property. When I sell the property, because Mr. and Mrs. decides that they're gonna take the front unit and they want the affordable to be the back unit, that's when it should be decided. And when I close that unit with those people, somehow to work that out so it works that way, or we decide which one at the building permit, which one the affordable is going to be. And if there's going to be a change, we go back to the building inspector or somebody and ask to flip-flop that.
I think
setup.
it was decided, Alex, that it had to be the certificate of occupancy.
Okay, that'll be
When that-
fine.
When that was completed, then,
On the certificate of occupancy would be fine.
okay,
That would be fine too, because you're not, normally when I build a model, the certificate of occupancy usually isn't pulled until pretty close to when it's sold.
yeah, but the discussion was, when you were building your units and you got a 3-to-1, 3 market rate, I believe, to 1 LMI, you had to have the certificates of occupancy on that LMI before you could continue to the next one, the next market rates. So for every 4 units, you have to have a certificate of occupancy for that LMI.
Correct, and I think I said during the last meeting, that's not an additional requirement that the town imposes, that's a requirement of state law.
No, I don't have any problem with that at all. I understood that completely. And that's why I said I would build a duplex first to stay ahead of the curve. And there's no way I'm going to start 5 single-family houses and have two or three of these duplexes built. Not sold. It ain't happening. Like, I mean, we're talking about,
Okay,
we're talking about the earth coming to an end. No, come on.
all
There's
right,
no
we're
way.
just making everybody, sure everybody's on the same page.
What I think the answer is, and if, as long as Amy agrees with me, I think the right way to do it is we pull the building permit on the duplex, and on the CO, the affordable has to be decided on the CO before the CO can be issued. Would that be okay with you, Amy?
That's okay with me. I mean, again, state law says construction and occupancy. To me, that contemplates review at both building permit stage and CO stage. But my personal view is the CO is really what matters, right? Can't sell it without a CO. So that's, I don't have any issue with leeway on that aspect.
Okay. Well, that's good. That's cited.
Okay. Any other questions from board members?
Steve,
Any
could I
other
ask,
any other attendees want to speak? Oop. Go ahead, Susan.
sorry, last thing. I'd like to ask a question of Mr. Pertucci, if that's okay. I asked a couple of meetings ago, and I just wanted to sort of leave a bug in his ear. I know that we're vested in the number of units, and Mr. Pertucci is trying to keep his costs low. But I also look at the density of this project and consider how desirable it would be if he did have some open space in the middle of his project. And so if I can, I would like to just stick a little bug into Mr. Pertucci's ear, and then I'll leave him alone and never ask again, if he might consider maybe lot 19 becoming a playground, being an open space, some barbecue space, some gathering space for all of these units to come together. And I think about when I bought my house and I had little kids and how huge a selling point it would be if I had, oh my God, there's a playground across the street. This house is the best house ever. And I just wanted to, I guess, stick that bug in his ear, and then I won't mention it anymore.
Well, Susan, you're taking from the applicant. He was granted
realize.
something. I beg your pardon?
I realize that, but
Okay.
I guess it would be a charity. I'm asking Mr. Bertucci to maybe charitably consider adding this to his community.
Was that a no, Mr. Alex? It was.
Susan. I mean, Susan, I love kids as much as everybody else does. But, I mean, to take a lot and to turn it into a playground, you're asking me to give you a couple of $100,000. And a couple $100,000 out of that would take lot 6, 7, 8, and 9 profit to make up that loss. So you're asking me, see, you don't even know what you're asking me, and I'm just trying to explain to you in a nice way. You're asking me to go out and build lot 9, lot 8, lot 7, lot 6, leave lot 19 empty, have the town, build a playground. That would be in 2 more houses. Pay all the overhead to do this. It's just financially impossible.
Okay.
It just won't, it would never work. If there was a big piece of land that was connected to this, that you guys could use for a playground, I'd give it away. If it wasn't a house lot, I would give it to you. And I'd say, town, go build a playground, be my guest. I'll even flatten the ground off for you. I'll make it nice and even so you can put a playground in. There's not enough land here. This is a village, in-town village. It's not a big project. I got a project right now that I'm doing. I'm going to give you an example, and I don't mind if you guys don't mind me blabbing off for a second. I got a very large project coming into town. It's going to be over maybe 80 to 90 lots. That project is going to have a gigantic area for maybe a playground or maybe a community center or something like that. It's going to be part of the subdivision. That would be done from the beginning, not on the 11th hour. I just, and I'm a type of guy that I hate to say no, but I can't do it in this project. I'm sorry.
Thank you. No, don't be sorry. I thought I'd ask. Thanks.
You're welcome.
All right, if there's no more questions from board members and we don't have any hands raised from the audience, this is a public hearing. If we're going to go into discussing draft motions and formulating a draft, what would you like to do on the public hearing?
I'll make the motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
A motion from Joe. Do we have a second? We have a second from Paul to close the public hearing. Any discussion? Hearing no, we'll take a poll on that. Pam, please, roll call.
Sure. Peter DiStefano,
Aye.
Maria Mack,
Aye.
Joe Murphy,
Aye.
Susan Axelrod,
Aye.
Paul Jordan,
Aye.
Steve Demasi,
Aye.
and Pam Rubinoff. Aye.
Okay, motion's unanimous to close the public hearing. So we have a draft motion that staff has worked on and granted. Jamie, apologize for getting this so late to us, but we have something to look at. So I suggest we either go through it line by line, or if somebody has something particular that they want to discuss, let's work on it. Go ahead, Joe.
I would like to have a discussion among the board members to see how they feel on the size of the LMI unit versus the market rate duplex. I know we have a proposal of 10%. I appreciate Jamie putting in that effort. But I feel at this point, it's just a proposal and it needs additional discussion. I personally, I'll start it off. I personally think that the LMI unit should be the same size as the market rate duplex unit for a few reasons. One is, as I think one of the attendees pointed out, the average size of the LMI is already significantly smaller than the average size of all the properties. He had come up with 19% versus 25% of what it would represent if it was the same size. The other thing is that Another compromise, it appears that the market rate unit will have a garage, which makes it even appear to be less compatible with the LMI unit. The overall proposal has a pretty high density, and I think one of our challenges is always to weigh the benefits of the to the town versus the impacts. As you know, we have the needs and I say this over and over in all the meetings, the needs of the town for affordable housing is pretty diverse, whether it be a 1-bedroom rental unit or a 3 or 4 bedroom single family house. And we're trying to have different tools to get to that diversity. We have the ADUs, which are really targeting those smaller rental units. And hopefully we'll be working on some other things such as the manor houses and other things that'll target that small size. But subdivisions is really the only tool we have for those larger units and to meet that need in the community. So I personally feel that the LMI unit should be the same size as the duplex market rate unit. So that's my feeling.
Okay. Comments on Joe's statement? Do we have a consensus on that? Maria, did you?
I agree. You know, we've been talking about sort of this equity for since the beginning, and it is a very dense subdivision. There are a lot of concessions that have been made, and I think he's right.
Okay.
I too would agree. I
Right.
feel that, you know, as Maria just pointed out, you know, yes, we understand that that is the point of the comprehensive permit to do LMIs. And I think that we have discussed some of the concessions that we've made in terms of, you know, and again, because of the nature of the land, et cetera, you know, the open space, et cetera. So I would agree if we could have more equity there, that would be preferable to me.
Do we
Paul?
understand that we're,
Mr. Petrucci?
Alex, can I finish talking to the board, please? See if we have a
getting out
consensus.
of control again?
Alex, please. No, I'm talking to the board members right now.
Go ahead, but they don't understand one thing.
Well, all right, you can explain after, but I'm trying to get a consensus of the board.
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I feel like this question's been asked before, but the door sort of got opened on this on the density. You know, the Affordable Housing Collaborative thought the rental units, having all the LMI as rental was a good idea. And then it was approved by this board. I'm sort of willing to give it a shot, so long as we're not opening the door to every next comprehensive permit coming in and saying, I want to do what they did at Curtis Corner. You know, so long as because this whole thing sort of is a little bit experimental. I mean, this was an idea that affordable housing sort of promoted to Mr. Petrucci. Sure, do apartments. I'm not crazy about it. I'm not crazy about the density. I'm not crazy about the disparity in size, but I'm willing to let it go, provided that it doesn't mean we always have to let it go in the future.
This is Amy. Let me comment on that briefly. It might be experimental for South Kingstown, but this development doesn't strike me as experimental statewide. You know, for purposes of the Rhode Island LMI Housing Act, this development is not unique. Or I think the Fieldstone Farms development was unique in that, and I think Shab agreed, this is the first development they had seen where all of the LMI units were proposed as accessory apartments. And that's why they agreed with our decision there that we couldn't make that positive finding on integration. So and I just want to impress upon you again, remember that finding, that critical finding of, you know, there's really 3 elements. Compatible, integrated is the first element. And in my opinion, the integrated element of that finding is a finding that you make at master plan stage. Integrated to me means the location of the LMI units vis-a-vis the location of the market rate units. Are they clustered together in one corner of the development, or are they to some extent spread throughout? Are they, integrated within the development? That's one aspect of the finding. Compatible in scale to the market rate units. So scale is another aspect. And remember, it's compatible, not equal. Finally, architectural style. Is the architectural style of the LMI units compatible with the architectural style of the market rate units? So I think the finding, again, of density and integration, that was decided at the master plan stage. Absolutely, you're within your rights to use your judgment on the finding of scale and architectural style compatibility or not, now that we're at the preliminary plan stage.
Could I just follow up to Amy's comment? When you said it was decided at master plan, I don't think it was intentionally decided at master plan. I believe that the board felt that because we put a condition in that it would be equal distribution throughout the site and compatible, that we thought that was going to happen, and that condition was not going to be overruled by language in the findings of fact, as we heard from Peter's memo. And I thought the board made it pretty clear, Joe being the one who kind of spearheaded that conversation from the very beginning.
With that said, I mean, whether it was intentional or not, it was a finding, and I think that I'm certainly, have to accept that. But what we're talking about now is not the size of the LMI versus the average size of all the property. What we're talking now is very specific, the LMI versus the market rate duplex. And so I'll accept, we have to accept what we did at the master plan, but I think asking for more compromise now, I would prefer not to make that additional compromise again.
Joe, are you, oh, go ahead, Peter.
I was gonna just, my two comments about the size percentage. I mean, I think they should be similar. I think he should have a little leeway on, I don't think it should be square foot for square foot. I think there should be maybe 5%, so that if he's going to sell something and someone's requesting a little bit more in one area or another, I don't know if 10 is the right number, but I don't think it should be 1,293 square feet and 1,293 square feet. I think there needs to be some give and take. And then I love the idea of the rental. I think it makes a ton of sense. I remember when Alex first brought this project in front of everybody, they talked about the low to moderate, the deed restricted units, and how people don't want to buy them because they can't make money. And it's almost like this albatross around their neck. They're going to buy something and live in it, but when they go to sell it, they're not going to be able to make a financial gain. This will give someone an opportunity, and it still gets us the LMI unit that we're looking for.
Joe, I was going to ask you on your statement, were you willing to live with Jamie's original goal of giving a 10%, leeway?
If you're asking 10% on when you're comparing the two units, I'm fine with that. When you're talking about the 10% average, meaning that the LMI units will end up in total being 10% less, that I was not necessarily okay with. I think that's another compromise being asked for. But as far as one building, he wants to make 1,100 and the market rate 1,000, and then the opposite on another building, I'm fine with that. So the average being the same.
Okay. All right. Susan,
And I do get a little concerned when we start talking about percentages, because that becomes a slippery slope. What's the next project? Is the next project 90%? Next project maybe 85%? And again, we've already made considerable compromises.
Yep. And I think we should have some definitions that are clear. So when this gets to fruition, we know where we started and where we ended. Susan, did you have something else to say?
No, I have no opinion either way.
All right, Alex?
Thanks.
Okay. the problem I see with this, if my market rates have to equal the duplex, you're gonna end up with a big duplex house and this little house next to it. They're not gonna be compatible at all. There's two different compatibles here we're dealing with. The compatible of what they look like from the outside. When I say the market rate are gonna be somewhere between, I forget what the number was, 14 to 16, was that, what was the, that
And
something
that's the
that,
problem. You've been all over with that number.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I think the board, with some of the discussion, has an answer to what the applicant's trying to state, and that's in the, and please correct me. In the language, in essence, as discussed, the average size of the LMI duplex units shall be within 10% of the market rate duplex units. Market rate duplex unit has to be between 1,000 and 1,200 square feet. So the duplex market rate unit is between 1,000 and 1,200 square feet. The LMI can deviate within 10% of that range. So if the market rate had 1,000 square foot unit in that building, the LMI could be 900 square feet. And then if it was 1,200 square feet for market rate, it'd be 120 less than that, or 1,080 for the LMI unit. All single family units have to average no less than 1,600 and no more than 1,800. And I think that's what I got out of the discussion, that the market rate single family homes in essence are between 1,400 and 1,600. And in essence, the duplexes are between 2,000 and 2,800. 2,400, depending on how you do the math of each unit. So
that's exactly what I'm trying to tell you.
so
And
both, and I think, Joe, that's what you were trying to get to.
That's why I'm telling you that if you build a duplex, let's say there are 1,000 on each side, let's use round numbers. You got 2,000 square foot and you're building a single family that's got 1,500 square feet. They're compatible looking from the outside. But if you force me to build a duplex at the same size as the market rate single family, it's 16 and 16 is 3,200 square feet. You're gonna have this big duplex next to this small house. It's not gonna come out right. This is why I came up with these numbers. I didn't just pull these out of the air. And on top of that, if you did that, now what you're doing is defeating the purpose of the subdivision in the first place. You're gonna take a duplex that's got 3,000 square feet in it, and if you do the math, building cost today somewhere is between, without land, is about $150 a square foot. You do the math, add the land, you're gonna be expecting people to spend $700,000, $800,000 for a duplex? What happened to the affordable idea of the project? It's out the window. It's not gonna work.
Mr. Chairman, I think the applicant is arguing with himself, because I'm not taking that away from what the board was discussing. The board has a square footage range for a market rate single family home and a range for a market rate duplex, which includes an LMI rental. If I missed something, please, I can easily revise the language to better articulate what the board is discussing.
Jamie, so allowing for the range in the language that you have proposed, what impact, both best and worst case scenario, does that have on the cumulative number of the percentage, which I think is what Joe was trying to address?
Again, we'll deal with this if we can. I'm writing the numbers down as I'm saying them, but if we look at market rate duplex, one side has to be 1,000 and the other has to be within 10% of that, or we'll just call it 1,000 and 1,000. So that unit would have a square footage of 2,000 square feet. If you went to the upper range of that, of 1,200 and 1,200, the square footage would be 2,400. So the ranges in essence of the market rate duplex, for simple math, are between 2,000 square feet and 2,400. The range for the single family market rates is between 1,400 and 1,600. So the duplex, by the nature of being a duplex, is going to be slightly larger than the market rate. The average within the market rate allows him potentially to do a 2,000 square foot house and then a 14, and the average of those would fall within the range. But there is, in essence, no average range for the duplex. The range for the duplex is a hard square footage. It has to be within 1,000 on the low, 12 on the high, and within 10% of that on the LMI. So, and a street presence, you're looking at a 30, 35 foot, footprint on the street side.
Jamie, that's not exactly what I was proposing. That's not exactly what I was proposing. What I was proposing
Okay,
is that
I'm trying to get clarity, Joe. Thank you.
Okay, what I was proposing was that the average LMI duplex unit be the same square footage as the average market rate duplex unit. So individually in individual buildings, they could vary by 10%, but when you look at the overall average, they're the same. And I don't necessarily, I understand Alex's perspective. I don't necessarily agree with his argument. If the argument is that it needs to be 10% less to keep the building smaller, one being 1,000, one being 900, and he's arguing that if we make them the same, the building's going to get a lot larger. No, we could just make them both 950, all right? By making them one smaller, you are in essence making the LMI unit subservient to the market rate. And that's what I'm trying to avoid.
And Jamie, in terms of the comment that Mr. Petrucci had about comparison between the market rates and the duplexes, I mean, it was his decision not to make any of the market rate or any of the single family homes, I should say, affordable. So we really, we don't have any ability to do anything about that, because all of the affordables are in the duplexes. So making that comparison isn't really something that we can do, correct?
Just from a footprint standpoint, to Mr. Murphy's point, if the average of the duplex has to be the same square footage of the average of the single family home.
No, Jamie, that's not the argument I was trying to make.
Okay.
The single family completely separate, all aside. We agreed that on the master plan. I'm not even addressing that at all. I'm just looking at the duplex units. And what I'm saying is the average LMI duplex is the same as the average market rate duplex. That's what I'm proposing.
In essence, that's what that's what we would be doing by
Right.
10% of the 1,000 to 1,200. I think we're saying the same thing, Joe.
Okay.
It
Okay.
sounds like everyone's on the same page.
Yeah. We're just-
So to simplify, you have a range for square footage for the market rate houses. Would it make more sense to give a range for the square footage of the entire dwelling unit of the duplex, and then tell him he can divide it however he likes, except that the two sides need to be within 10% of each other? Like give him,
Susan, in essence, we've done that. The range
Right.
is 2,000 square feet to 2,400 square feet. That would be the range for the duplex.
but I think Mr. Pertucci was arguing with the size of that,
No,
unless he's confused.
yeah, no, I again, these numbers are what were discussed with his legal counsel.
Okay.
Oh, these numbers are-
Again, I think we're saying the same thing. The difficulty I have with averages is that the average is a moving target. If all of a sudden you do 10 single-family houses at 1,400 square feet, it skews the average for the next cut. Now can you do 4 at 2,400 square feet? I think then you have a compatibility issue. I think it's simpler doing the range that gives the builder the flexibility. because the average could get skewed for the last 2 or 3 units. For the same reason you're requiring the LMIs to be built 3 to 1, you could skew the average to the last 4 or 5 houses versus just having a harder range. And maybe, you could offer 10% flexibility to the left or right of the range, but the averages have the opportunity to be skewed and difficult to administer through the life of the project.
You make a lot of sense, Jamie.
I didn't hear you, Alex.
I said Jamie made a lot of sense in that last statement.
All right, so then we're in agreement then on that.
I know Jamie said we're saying the same thing. I not necessarily think I hear the same thing. I'm concerned that the market rate may end up, the LMI duplexes may end up to be 10% less than the market rate, but Jamie's telling me that cannot happen. Correct?
So in essence, the smallest that an LMI rental unit could be is 900 square feet, Joe.
But is it going to be, when you add them all up, are they going to be the average the same as the market rate duplexes? It sounds like we still have the possibility of them being 10% less.
What could happen is he could choose to build 8 units with 1,000 square feet of market rate with 900 square feet of rentals. But the average, that would be the range. It'd be 100 square feet off.
All right, so that's what I'm trying to avoid.
Right.
Joe, let me explain something, okay? Just for a second. Let's just think about this for a moment. 10% of a unit is a small amount. If you think about it for a second, just think these units are all to it. Remember, we talked about this. We said we're never going to build 1-bedroom apartments for the affordables. We said would all be 2-bedroom units. Well, let's say that both units are identically alike. One of the units is a elderly couple that have a wheelchair problem. They're affordable. They can do it. They need an extra bathroom. So that unit would end up being actually 10% bigger than the market rate one, or vice versa. The reason why I want to give myself some flexibility is so that I can adjust these units. I'm not going to run out there and make every affordable unit as small as I can and the market rate as big as I can. That's not the object of this project. The object of this project is bedrooms, 2 bedrooms for each side, affordable for the person to be able to buy the unit and to be able to have an affordable unit on it that they can rent out. The town gets affordable rentals that they're looking for, and everybody's happy. And the single families are coming in under what the crazy market is out there, trying to build them small enough, but not too small that they're not marketable, but not too big that they're outrageously priced. So I got to do the same thing with the duplex. I can't let the duplexes get to be 3,000 square feet. I mean, you're a very sensible man. You know what stuff costs a square foot. As soon as you start getting crazy on square footage, the prices go through the roof.
Steve, I think we're going around in circles. Like he stated it. I understand Alex's point, and I think he has a lot of good points from the marketing perspective and a perspective of the applicant. I respect all those points. It's a different perspective just from the needs of the town and the compromise on the comprehensive permit. So kind of going around and around, and there's just and he has valid perspectives from. So I would say that.
Mr. Chairman, just listening to both sides and looking at my notes, and something that Pete said earlier is that 5%, if they're 100% identical, that doesn't give any flexibility in footprint or design. But if there was a 5% variation, so you were talking about 1,000 square feet versus 1,050 square feet, that would give them a little bit of flexibility on the footprint and design of the unit. But bring it more in alignment to what Mr. Murphy's trying to accomplish with some flexibility. And again, that's not my take. That was something that Peter had mentioned earlier on, and I'll give him credit there. But, again, I understand what Mr. Murphy's trying to do. The market rate unit has a garage, the LMI doesn't, but having them within, in essence, 50 square feet of each other, or 60 square feet, if it was 1,200 square feet, you're talking about a 6 by 10 area, basically the size of a pantry in one of the units. But that would give a little bit of flexibility on the architectural side to making the two units cohesive and show as one. Joe, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, or Pete, if you wanted to expand on your suggestion.
No, I'm just trying to stay consistent on this application as I will on all the other applications that come in front of us. And whether it's, the same or whether it's 5%, I mean, I'm going to, at the end of the day, I want to go along with what the rest of the board feels like as far as this project goes, but I'm just trying to stay consistent, that's all.
You're looking for similar and compatible in size.
Jamie, is there a way to modify the language so that you have flexibility, but ultimately end up with the same percentage?
You'll end up,
When you total all of them?
It's still got to be plus or minus 5.
I would say, Maria, you're going to end up, 4 will follow the, say, if we pick 5%, but have an average, you're going to end up at some point having to catch up to that average. So what you're talking about, if we did one unit was 1,000, one was 1,050, the average is 125. That means in the next unit, something's got to go up a little bit. And I think you're just playing, kind of sliding a number to meet that average versus saying, look at it from a design perspective. If one unit is, I walked you through basically what looked like two identical units, and one's 1,000 and one's 1,050. I think everyone would be hard pressed to find where that 50 square feet is lacking in either one of the units without seeing the number on paper. It's such a small number.
That's understood, but again, going forward, if given the concessions that we have made on this particular site, if we allow this to happen, then what will help us going forward to make sure that that is not the case and things are more equitable in terms of percentages and size?
And in a lot of instances, when you have owner occupied duplexes, the owner's unit is slightly different than the rental unit, either in style or size. Again, I absolutely understand and respect the commission's point of view. It's just from a design footprint area, to Pete's discussion as a builder, offering some flexibility. I think the average is tough because you're going to have an average that gets skewed at the end, and you're going to end up having the last two units potentially be out of whack with the first 6 in order to meet that average. That's my only primary concern about doing the average. But, Joe makes a valid point that, you're looking at equity and compatibility, and you look at the 3 things. And Amy has reminded the board that it needs to be compatible in scale. It hasn't been interpreted by Shaft law to mean equal. And I know you're trying to find equity in the 2 units, and I'm just saying, is there any flexibility in that from a buildability standpoint?
We're still only getting 25 versus 75 in terms of percentage.
Can you expand upon that, Maria?
They're only required to put in a 25% affordability. So we're still at 75-25 in terms of the grand scheme of things, in terms of the larger picture of affordable housing in the community.
Mm-hmm. But it's 15% over the state's goal of 10. Again, the 10% is a number the state has given the town, and it's a goal. Again, Amy and I are here to write the language to articulate what the board wants.
I mean, I think that 5% piece, Alex brought up an extra bathroom for someone to want to put a second bathroom in a house. Like, I feel like 5%, we're talking a small amount of square footage to give them a little flexibility if someone is going to buy one and then rent one out. We all sat through that last meeting with, we're talking about housing we need, and we finally have someone that's looking to build worker housing, not even just low to moderate. There, it sounds like the intent is to make worker housing, and we all listened with town council, how there are people screaming that we don't have that. And I think 5% would be a reasonable adjustment.
Yeah, I can live with the 5%. That's a
Well,
good
and I
compromise.
appreciate Peter bringing in his expertise of, as a designer and builder, where you need some of that flexibility. So 5%, as he's pointing out, I now I'm seeing it. I think that I too could live with that, Peter.
Okay. If there's no more discussion on that, can we continue on to some more of the conditions of approval we have before us?
Yes.
Joe?
Nope, I'm willing to compromise.
Okay.
So if it's 5%, it's 5%.
And Maria, in regards to the landscaping, I'm not sure where that was in the conditions of approval here, but Alex has agreed to go with your suggestion.
Yes, I am. See, this is the difficulty of us not having a draft motion in hand on paper and the public not being able to see it. I'm scrolling through it right now, but this is, I just don't think this is the right way to do things. I think we can come to an agreement on this draft, but I don't think the
Well, we're
way
not
that
gonna-
we're going about it is.
I know, but we're not going to vote on it tonight. We're trying to give staff the information
Okay.
they need
So,
to
let me find
compose
it.
one for the.
Yeah.
All right,
Mr. Chairman,
so
if I could read it, what Maria's
I'm
referring
just-
to was item number 16. Maria, if it would be. okay.
yes, it's number
Modified.
16. Yep, I just got to it.
Okay. The applicant shall modify the landscape plan by replacing the proposed green giant arborvitaes for a more suitable native conifer, white spruce.
Picea glauca.
Okay.
Maria, can I ask a question?
Sure.
The white spruce, do the deer eat those more than the other ones? Which one does the
Less.
deer like the
Less.
less?
The deer don't touch them. And
Okay,
and
so-
they thrive in wet
Wet
soils,
areas.
so they can
Oh.
handle,
All right, well, you're 100% right. I don't want the ones that the deers eat. I'm not a landscaper, so.
All right, so we have 16 completed. While we're right there, Jamie, number 19 was talking about the witness post, so number 19 is going to have the granite.
No, for clarification there, Mr. Chairman, that you do have a couple other areas around the detention basin that aren't on a property line that
Okay,
delineate the buffer, just in the southwest corner of the development, that you would transition to another style of marker.
okay, so that's what 19 is referring to.
Yes.
Okay,
and then 22, Jamie, does 22 refer to what you have suggested?
Yes. So that
And
the applicant shall install granite monuments / blocks on the side property lines for lots 7, 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13, 50 feet from the edge of delineated wetlands adjacent to each lot. The granite monument shall serve as permanent wetland buffer markers and shall be referenced in the restrictive easements placed on the lots. Minimum 2 feet by 2 feet by 3 feet. The applicant shall install wetlands buffered placards on each granite monument.
And Jamie, where would the language relating to the deeds be? Where the areas that were permanently delineated as no cut areas, where should that happen in this particular, what, should it be an additional condition or should it be added to something else?
Then number
That-
24.
That's in there under item number 24.
Yeah,
I-
this is Amy. 24 doesn't say that. 24 references the conservation easement, not the document. So I think, Maria, you were saying you would like to see the open space referenced in the deed as well. The condition regarding the deeds is condition 9, and that refers to the affordability guidelines. I would recommend you put that in as a separate condition if that's the consensus of the board.
I would, I'd go along with that.
Okay, we can clarify that.
Jimmy, can I make a remark about the granite? These granite markers supposed to be 2 feet by 2 feet. I think they're 2 by 2 and they're 3 feet high. That's how the way they were supposed to be. And we're gonna have to drop them in the dirt a little bit so they can never be moved. Isn't that what we agreed on?
So 2 feet wide, 2 feet high, and
2 by 2 by 3.
yeah,
2 feet by 2 feet by 3 feet high. And I'm gonna put a foot of it in the ground.
yes,
So you have a 2 by 2
Yeah.
by 2, big lump sticking there. And
above
nobody's
the
gonna
ground,
move that.
correct.
Yeah, nobody's gonna move that thing.
So
have to
Jamie,
back-
do these have to be granite or can they be natural stone as long as they meet that minimum size? I just want to be clear on what you had in mind.
Again, I referenced the term granite block, so they would be consistent and easily recognizable, consistent between the property lines. So there wouldn't be, well, one person has a small rock, someone has a bigger rock. What are those? One of the rocks has a different hardness to the neighbor's rock and is going to crumble over time. They should, in essence, be very similar in nature. They don't have to be cut stone from a quarry, bought at that exact dimension. But if he found antique bridge abutment block in a very similar size to that, even if it was slightly bigger, that would be appropriate. But again, the intent is consistency, so it's easily identifiable between property and property for what they stand for. It's not intended to be a natural landscape boulder.
It's okay with me. Granite's okay with me. They're a little more expensive, but they're probably more available and they'll probably be easier to set.
And Jamie, just for everybody's benefit, condition number 5, there was a typo there. It should be 24, not 13.
Correct.
And in regards to the applicant's request to build model units, will that have to go into this motion?
I'll make a statement, then Amy can follow up on that. I think the intent of the applicant is he's going to build I don't know if his intent is to build a model unit and hold that model unit through the process, or in essence, build a market rate in an LMI unit and then move on from there in that manner. If he's keeping the ratio of 3-to-1, there's no need to do anything special in the motion.
This is Amy. I agree with that. Again, the main concern for me is issuance of COs. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think the market unit, the model unit, I'm sorry, is going to need a CO, correct? Because it's not, at least initially, you don't need a CO to walk people around.
Well, it also mentioned prior to recording the property. To build, when he builds these model units.
So again, the state law requires simultaneous construction and occupancy. That's for all units in the development, whether they're considered model units or not. My only concern is I want to see 3-for-1 issuance of COs.
Amy, should we give Mr. Petrucci a letter though, so that there's something that states that, yes, we agree that these model units can be constructed, so there's no ambiguity anywhere, even if it's not required?
That certainly couldn't hurt. I'll work with Jamie on that.
I lost you guys for a minute.
No, you
I'm not very good at computers.
Anything else pop out to board members on these conditions? And again, we're gonna have another look at these. It's just we're trying to get.
Mr. Chairman, Susan had her hand raised.
Go ahead,
Thanks,
Susan.
Jamie. Are we also looking at the conservation agreement right now, or just the motion, the draft motion?
No, that would be part of it.
Okay.
Again, sorry, Susan, the language is suggested. It hasn't been vetted by council yet.
Okay.
And I know Mr. Kenyon also had a kind of sample that he's used in the past and may offer that as an alternative to that. That's just intended to be representative of the type of easement that would be that they were willing to place on the property.
Okay. Would we get to see the draft of it before we vote on this motion?
This is Amy. Legal, meaning me, always reviews the legal documents, including the deed restriction and the conservation easement and the HOA documents. Typically, the planning board doesn't review those because those are, those are form documents. I review them to make sure they're in line with what state law requires. But the legal documents aren't something that the planning board reviews. You delegate that to staff and legal.
Okay, thanks.
It's approaching 9 o'clock here. Does the board want to push on? Do they want to take a break? It seems we might have reached the end of our comments on this draft at this point. Do we want to take a break or do we want to just finish this out and
I think we might as well finish it up. It doesn't seem like there's a whole lot more left.
Again, Mr. Chairman, it would be my intent to work with council, amend the draft as discussed by the board tonight and recirculate that amongst the board.
Okay.
And do that in a very timely manner.
Okay, we have a decision that was due by March 9th. So we're going to need an extension on that. Are we going to need another special hearing for this, or are we going to be able to do it on a regular?
We should be able to put that on our regular meeting.
Yeah, you do have a very busy agenda, but again, if we can get this to you quickly, I think the board did a excellent job tonight discussing and working through the language, given the short nature that you had it to digest it. But again, we will turn this around in draft and I would foresee it coming.
Jamie, are you saying you're going to have this for next Tuesday's meeting?
I would try and potentially revise it tomorrow. But again, it may be difficult to do it on Tuesday, but we may be able to make your first meeting in March.
Okay,
Wait,
part of
wait,
our
wait,
work session?
Yes, we can make part of the work session a regular meeting just to vote on an item. We've done that in the past, yes.
Okay. All right, so with that in mind, then Jamie, when you get the draft to us, if anybody has any immediate questions or suggestions, they should reach out to staff. So maybe get that settled before that work session. Just so we
Again,
don't get into a lengthy discussion at the work session over this.
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, given the goal of March 9th, we would probably try to have that out by next Tuesday.
Okay.
And Jamie, you and Amy will have another good look at condition number 4 and make certain that the language represents our discussion tonight.
We can look at that, yes.
So it's clear to all of us.
Yes.
Okay.
And this draft would also be on the town's website on our agenda under either the travel page or something else so that it is able to be viewed by the public for our meeting in March.
Yes, we was our intention to put it up today. We had a few technical difficulties that couldn't be solved prior to the meeting. Brian Wagner was doing a yeoman's job to get that up and this afternoon and actually link it also to our current projects page also. So there are multiple ways to get to it, Maria.
Thanks.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Jay?
Yeah, just wanted to remind the board that the decision deadline, March 9th, falls on the night of the work session next month. So that would be the deadline.
Okay. Mr. Kenyon, any comments? Mr. Petrucci, any comments?
Mr. Chairman, I don't have any comment. I think Jay just mentioned that the meeting we would be on is also the deadline.
Yes.
Right. So it seems to me like then we should be all set. Obviously, if something comes up between then we can discuss extending that, but
You know,
it looks like you're on track.
This is Amy. John, I keep waiting for the weather event that's going to cut power to the town, right? It would make me personally feel better if you gave us maybe a week just in case. I think it's everyone's intent that we, finish this for good on the 9th, but just in case we've got to continue the meeting for any number of reasons, it would make me feel a little better if you granted us an extra week.
Well, Amy, I don't blame you because I just lost internet for some reason for 15 minutes in the middle of my zoning board hearing about a half hour ago. So I understand. Of course, I have to run it by Alex. Alex, are you good with that, I assume?
You're muted, Alex.
I said, I don't have any problem with it, as long as we can get this thing done so that I can get under construction. As I explained in the beginning, I have a road builder that's ready to do the job for me, and I don't want to lose them. And
Okay.
and it would be a perfect timing that we could break ground in the beginning of April.
So, Mr. Chairman, for the record, we do agree to extend the time for the board making a decision 1 week.
To March 16th.
That's correct.
Okay. Amy, we need a motion on that to,
So you've made a motion, I'm sorry.
well, we need a motion to continue.
Yeah, I think we've already closed the public hearing, correct?
Yes, we have.
Okay, so then yes, a motion to continue.
All right, we need a motion to continue to the 9th and extend the deadline to the 16th.
I'll make
of
that
March.
motion.
Okay, we have a second.
I'll second.
I have a second from Pam. Any discussion? All right. All those in favor, just raise your hand. All right, unanimous. Motion passes. Okay. All right. Thank you,
Great.
gentlemen.
Thank you very much. Have a good night.
All right.
Thank you.
A motion for
Thank you. Good
adjournment?
night.
Oh, wait,
Oh.
just a reminder to everyone that we have a meeting next week, the 23rd, and prior to that meeting at 6 o'clock is the presentation on the Ethics and Open Meetings Act from is it Attorney General's office that's doing this?
It's the Ethics Commission.
Ethics Commission.
Did that link get sent, Amy?
Not yet.
Okay.
We're working on that. You should
Okay.
have that. You should have that soon. It's on the school committee's agenda, but we're working on that for the town side.
All right. That'll be a long night then, by the looks of it. So,
Well,
Right.
we're only in it for an hour regardless, right?
no, at the meeting after it.
Yeah,
I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
so moved.
Second. By Joe. All those in favor, raise your hand. It's unanimous. We'll see you on the 23rd.
Good night,
Hopefully
everybody.
at 6,
Good night.
and definitely at 7.
Thank you, everyone.
All right, good night,
you.
everyone.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Night.